Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night. And to tell the truth, there were a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first of all, of course, we're going to start with the Black Sea, with the Battle of the Black Sea. And currently, as I can see, according to updates we received, the situation is not very good for the Russians, and more or less the situation works and goes in Ukrainian favor. Of course, the Ukrainians during the previous waves of attacks lost their ports in Odessa, they lost their port in Izmail, in Reni, but the Ukrainians still have possibility to send their drones, ships, everything they have using the Dunai River, and furthermore, they can launch the drones and the types of weapon they have not even from the territory of Ukraine, but let's say from the NATO bank of Dunai River. And this night, the Ukrainians made another attempt of attack Russian ships. The Ukrainians during the previous waves of attacks, let's increase the number of updates since the 23rd of July, were trying to attack the Russians mainly in the western part of the Black Sea, and to be more precise, on the southwestern part of the Black Sea. And the Russians were expecting those attacks, so that's why they were ready. And all of those attacks were repelled by the Russians, according to the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation. But this night, the Ukrainians made another attempt to attack, and currently the Ukrainians were attacking the Russians not in the western part of the Black Sea, but in direction of Russian Navy base in the vicinity in the settlement by the name of Novorossiysk. The Russian sources have already made their own conclusions, saying that because of the fact that the ports were destroyed, the Ukrainians launch their navy drones from Dunai and probably from the territory of Romania, a NATO country, at least from their bank of the river, because this is the only secure area, this is the only secure part of this river, and the Russians, of course, will not attack the NATO territory. And currently we see another episode of NATO country involvement in this situation, because basically the drones, navy drones that attack Novorossiysk and the port and the ship was sent from the NATO territory, because the only secure place in the special military operation. Now let's discuss that attack. First of all, we got the Minister of Defense report that we received at 6 a.m. of the local time, and according to that report, the Ukrainians used 2 navy drones in that attack. And the Russians reported that they managed to destroy every single ship. But there is one very big bad situation. First of all, let's take a look at the videos that the Russians published. It's very difficult to understand what is going on, but we need to watch this video with the sounds. But anyway, there is a ship, there is a fire on water. If you have seen small dot, this is exactly the navy drone that was already destroyed, and he was in fire. And also we got the video of explosion. Probably the Russians managed to destroy one of the drones. And of course we have the videos of strikes with missiles, with some machine guns and so on above the surface of the water. Probably the Russians were trying to attack, and then we see the fire of the drone, and everything is perfect. But there is one more time a very big situation. First of all, at somewhere at 10 a.m. of the local time, at 9 a.m. of the local time, the Ukrainian sources published the video, and this author of this video claims that in this video we can see the special operation of Ukrainians as SBU, Secret Service. And in this video we see exactly the moment of attack against the Russian ship. And according to this video, we see that the Russians haven't seen the ship, at least until the strike against an attack against the ship. And later we got more videos from the same territory from the Russian sources, and in this video we see that that ship was damaged, and that ship was pretty damaged. Of course, the Russians managed to save the ship, and probably they are able to repair. But anyway, the ship, which cost is few hundred millions of dollars, was almost destroyed by the drone, which cost is less than probably $50,000. It's a critical situation for the Russians, and we see that if the situation is going to develop the same way, the Russians will lose the Battle of the Black Sea. If the Russians want to win the Battle of the Black Sea, they need to show the same result. They need to show the same drones, and they need to fight with Ukrainian drones, with their drones. But the question is whether the Russians have this time to create their own new technology or not. Because a year ago, there was a video how the Russians attacked with the drone the bridge in the vicinity of Zatoka. That was probably the first usage of a Russian type drone, and maybe the Russians Russians have this possibility. So let's say furthermore, today the Minister of Defense also reported about the air defense, that air defense shut down the Ukrainian drones that were attacking Crimea. The Ukrainians were using 13 drones. 10 of them were suppressed, were destroyed by the air defense system, and 3 of them were suppressed by the Russian electronic warfare systems. And this is also the videos of launchings of the rock missiles against those drones. So the situation is critical, and of course the Ukrainians lost their ports. I'm saying that there can't be winners in this war, because what does it mean to win in this war? What does it mean to win the Battle of the Black Sea? To win the Battle of the Black Sea means that either the Ukrainians or the Russians will save their trade routes in this area. If anybody lose trade routes in this area, this party is losing. For now, the Ukrainians have already lost. The Russians still keep their trading routes, and they still have possibility to trade with the worldwide using the ports. But if the Ukrainians are able to destroy the Russian ships as they did, or damage as they did the previous night, the Russians will lose their possibility to send ships, because sooner or later one of them will be destroyed by the Ukrainian drone, and the insurance costs will be increased significantly, and after that there are going to be no trade in the Black Sea. And then, so there is just 2 options: or Russia can hold and can keep the control of this territory, or everybody will lose. So we'll see what parties are able to do in this situation. Now let's talk a little bit about the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation, Shoygu. Today, Minister of Defense visited the central front line, central part of the front line, central group. Let's call it like this: the area where the Russians started their offensive operation in the vicinity of the Kupiansk front line. This area is responsible for Kupiansk area. He inspected the area. He also was shown the CV-90, the Swedish armored vehicle that was captured by the Russians during the previous offensive operation. So we see that the Russians are trying to show how Shoygu inspected the main forces, the main Russian forces that currently in offensive state, and probably shown him about the results, about the progress, and about the upcoming plans and what difficulties this part of the front line faced during the previous offensive operation. So basically, the Shoygu was somewhere in this area inspecting the forces on the Kupiansk and Liman front lines. Now we will move him for a while in this direction. Later we are going to move him back as soon as we find out his new position. Now let's move to the combat line. Today we got a lot of updates from the Novopokrovka, from Bradley Square, and there were a lot of very interesting updates, and I will explain to you why. First of all, let's one more time increase the number of updates that we received from this front line since the beginning of the Battle of Robotine. And as you can see, mainly we see just few types of icon. The first type of icon is the skull, means that this geolocated losses of Ukrainian forces. Another type is a red drone, means that there was attacks of Russian Lancet or FVP drones. And we also have some machine gun, some AK-47 icons, means that there was like attack in the Ukrainian forces in this or that direction or something like this. The only type of icon we can't see in this area is drones. We haven't seen since the beginning of June, since the first days of Ukrainian offensive operation, even a single video from the Ukrainian side of usage of drones. And I wonder, why is that? Why is that? How can this happen? Because we remember the picture in the vicinity of Bakhmut, Artyomovsk, Klishevka. I'll just show you one more time this region. So as you can see, there are hundreds of drones attacks that took place in Bakhmut, and we haven't received even a single video confirmation of usage of a drone attack in the vicinity of Bradley Square. And the thing is that the Russians today published a very interesting video, and this is the video that the Russians published. This is the series of videos of Ukrainian drones that were attacking the Russians, but all of them were suppressed by the Russian air defense, not air defense, but electronic warfare systems. The Russians managed to develop significantly powered EW electronic warfare equipment, and basically the Russians since the beginning of June managed managed to shut down almost every single Ukrainian drone that were flying in this area. So this is the reason why we haven't received even a single confirmation of Ukrainian attempt or Ukrainian attack with drones. And this is very important. The question is why the Russians haven't redeployed such type of weapons such in Klishchiivka. So that means that there are just few examples of this type of weapon, and basically on this front line the Russians were testing this type of weapon, this suppressor of Ukrainian drones. And as we can see, based on the results, based on the absence of any videos from this area, that means that this type of weapon is very powerful from the Russian side. The Ukrainians probably thought that they would be able to use drones, so that's why they have redeployed significantly low level of artillery systems in this area. They thought that they were able to use drones, but the drones were suppressed. There were no support of artillery because the Ukrainians relied on drones, and most of the artillery were redeployed to other front lines. So that was the situation, that was the mistake, and that was the trap and small ambush that Ukrainians got into in this area. The Ukrainians, of course, they realized the situation, they got some lessons, they got some experience from that, and currently the Ukrainians redeployed their artillery systems. And for example, today they published a series of video of bombing and shelling the Russian artillery positions in this area, the Russian positions in this area. And this also video is very interesting, not because of destroyed Russian positions, destroyed Russian artillery systems, but this video also confirms a lot from the geolocation perspective. And let's increase the speed of this video just for better understanding of the situation. Just forest lines were attacked, Russian artillery positions. So all the explosions and all these attacks in this area took place in the vicinity of Robotine, the south of Robotine, on the Bradley Square. And basically those explosions took place in the vicinity of Romanovskaya, in the vicinity on the south, on the east of Robotine, and on the west of Robotine. The important thing that this video confirms that as a result probably of maintaining the gap or something like this, the Russians managed to return their positions not just in the south of the graveyard of Ukrainian armored vehicles, but they managed to move further. And currently, according to those videos that were, by the way, published by the Ukrainian forces, managed to return control over this part as well. So according to those geolocated videos, we are going to update this map before the next video, of course. And another video from this area, how the Russians FEP drone didn't face any barriers in face of, let's say, electronic warfare type of weapon from Ukrainian side, and destroyed another Ukrainian armored vehicle somewhere in the vicinity of the Bradley Square. So the situation continue developing not in Ukrainian favor. So let's move further to the Vremyevka tactical bridgehead. We haven't received any updates, any attempts from the Ukrainian side. Just we got the video from the Russian side, and they shown us the results of battles for this Staromayorske. Some sources have already calculated around 20 pieces of armored vehicles. You know that it's very difficult to determine whether all these armored vehicles belongs to the Ukrainians or the Russians. I believe that some of the destroyed vehicles on this video belong to the Russian forces, because I believe if the vehicle is destroyed, nobody will move it from this front line, and the Ukrainians also were attacking the Russian positions. Anyway, we see the results of those clashes. A lot of armored vehicles destroyed. We don't see any bodies, just the destroyed armored vehicles in the vicinity of Staromayorske, and which confirms the heaviest clashes for that settlement, and that the Russians have at least fire control and visual control over this settlement. And we got another video from the Russian side, how they destroyed the abandoned Ukrainian armored vehicle, also somewhere in the vicinity of that settlement, using, of course, FEP drone with grenade. After this video, we're going to move to Klishchiivka, to Bakhmut, to Artyomovsk, and today we will discuss a very interesting topic, probably third or fourth important update about this special military operation. The first one was that the Ukrainians using the drones destroyed the ship. The second one was that Russian electronic warfare equipment that are able to suppress every type of Ukrainian drones. And when talking about Klishchiivka today, a soldier, an officer on the ground from the Russian side, published a very interesting article, very interesting note about new Ukrainian tactics. And this is very interesting, and I'll explain to you why. He was saying, we get this article from two major Telegram channel, that Ukrainians started using new type of warfare, new tactic, new doctrine, not new doctrine. They managed to develop their doctrine of usage of light drones. So we discussed that currently during the special military operation, the Russians and the Ukrainians went different ways of their military doctrine. The Russians took a decision to invest their time and money and everything they have into heavy drones, powerful drones like Lancet, like Cube, like many other types of Geran and so on. And the Ukrainians took a decision to develop light drones like FEP drones, and we saw the results. We saw the difference is completely two different tactics, two doctrines, military doctrines, and with time these doctrines develops more, and now currently the Russians and the Ukrainians are very not look like each other. They're completely different things, and I'll explain to you why. The Ukrainians managed to develop their light drones doctrine, and currently they start using very interesting equipment, and I was shocked when I heard about this piece of news. You know that there is a toys, if you have kids, maybe you have sisters, small brothers, sisters or kids, there is a toy that can repeat the sound. You know that you can take a toy, you can tell something to this toy, and then the toy repeats after you. And the Ukrainians start using these toys, and they're just dropping these toys all over the front line, and they know exactly where they have dropped this or that toy, and the toy repeats the sound. And if the Russians start movement at night, and for example, this toy can repeat the noise of you walking through the grass, or the machine gun bullets or explosions, the toy repeats, and the Ukrainian soldiers can understand where exactly this toy repeat the Russian sound, the sound of something. It doesn't mean that maybe the Russian soldiers, maybe even an animal, who knows, but they can repeat. This is very interesting. And also he noted that there are two types of such a toys. The toys that repeats your, let's say, the sound, for example, some noise that you make during walking in this between forests and forest lines and fields and so on. This situation Ukrainian used to understand and clarify discover your position. And the second type of toys that can repeat the sound of machine gun or rifle gun, or of shots of machine gun. So for example, the Ukrainians, when they're storming some position on the forest, they start dropping these toys around the Russian forces, and these toys start using this noise of machine gun, and the Russians think that they're encircled. So the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear the noise of machine gun behind you, not in front of you, but behind you, you think that enemy managed to encircle you. And the next thing you do is you are making an attempt to penetrate or to break through the encirclement and to step back from these positions. So this is the tactics, this is the new development of light drone doctrine that Ukrainians managed to develop during the process of Battle of Klishchiivka. Very interesting piece of information. I believe they will continue development of these tactics as well. The Russians published another video how the Ukrainians were trying to redeploy their engineering equipment as close as possible to Klishchiivka, probably to build another pontoon bridge or to create some passage, safe road for the Ukrainian forces to be able to drop more, to bring more support in direction of Andreevka and Klishchiivka. The Russians managed to discover that engineering equipment by drone and destroy it. Furthermore, the Ukrainians published another video how they were bombing and shelling Klishchiivka, and as a result of attack, they managed to burn, to set on fire a settlement by the 477th Mechanized Brigade, and there was a fire, and probably the Ukrainians managed to destroy at least a local operational ammo depot in this area. And now we are moving to Liman frontline. We also got some updates. The first one we got from Bilogorovka. Some mappers have already reported that the Russians managed to maintain the gap, to maintain the gray zone between Bilogorovka and Russian positions to capture more territories. But you know that this is the same situation with Bilogorovka as with Novoselovska. Today Russian controls, yes, tomorrow, the next day the Ukrainians will return control. So for now, until the hills behind Bilogorovka haven't fallen, I will not even update this map because it's useless, because there are so many clashes, and this entire area is in the gray zone. Probably just the hills is under Ukrainian control. On this video we see how the Russians attacked Ukrainian positions behind the hills, behind these mines, and something was destroyed. Also the Russians published the video of clashes in the vicinity of Dibrova. This video is geolocated. As you can see, the Russians haven't managed to develop their bridgehead very far from the settlement of Dibrova, and there was like missile strikes, and after that there were explosions in that forest. We see the forest. So basically this video confirms the combat line, confirms the positions of the Ukrainians, of the Russians in this area, and so that's it about this situation. And we got also another update how the Russians continue using Lancet. On this video we see how the Russians managed to discover the Ukrainian probably artillery system or Ukrainian forces, and also as a result of Lancet strike the Ukrainians lost another artillery position. So as you can see, two different types of doctrine: light drones FVP and heavy Lancet drones. You know that the thing that I understand that anyway this light drones doctrine is very cool. I'm not saying that this is the doctrine of winning. I'm not saying this, but you know that with Lancet drone you can't equip every single soldier in Russia. It's impossible, I believe so, or maybe it's possible but highly unlikely. But when talking about FVP small drones, you can give a small FVP drone to a single soldier, like a grenade. So in the future the soldiers will have not 3 or 4 grenades, but they will have 3 or 4 FVP drones that they can use as grenades. They can charge grenade on them and to send. So that's why I believe that the Russians need to think about this doctrine, and probably they need to start investing, because it's not a very expensive. The most important with the light drone doctrine is not the equipment, because it's not a big problem, big deal to start production of drones. The most important is experience that the soldiers obtained on the ground, on the battlefield, and to get experience you need time, and this is the main problem. And if the Russians start today, if the Russian soldiers will start using the light drone doctrine massively today, only in few months the soldiers will get enough experience to be able to do a very cool things and features on the ground. And it's time. The question whether the Russians have this time. Of course they have, but anyway, this is the time of losses, and many more losses. And of course, another video we got from Novoselovska. The Russians published the video how they attacked with drones another Ukrainian position in this area. And this is the position of Ukrainian forces. The position was discovered and was destroyed by Russian Lancet, or no, just FEP drone attack. Another important thing about the situation is that Ukrainians don't have any problems with supporting their forces with FEP drones, and the Russians try to adopt such a laws which the Russians want to start controlling process of FVP drone support of military forces. They want to do this like with one channel through the Ministry of Defense. They don't want to allow the Russian forces to be supported with FVP drones by volunteers or something like this. This is another mistake, but we see that there were a lot of strikes against Moscow with FVP drones, and most of them were launched not from Ukraine. They were launched somewhere from the territory of Moscow, so from the Moscow region. So maybe this is the reason why the Russians want to start controlling this procedure and this process. Okay. And we've covered probably everything with Ukraine. Now let's talk about a little bit more about Niger and about Nigeria and about France and the territory there. Of course, these days the Evgeny Prigozhin gave us his own understanding of the situation in Niger and the situation with that military coup and so on. According to him, the France and the Western countries were basically robbing that country. They were buying the uranium for $11 per kilo or per something. I don't know the quantity and the number, but the number we have $11. And after that, the French companies were selling that uranium for $280. So we see the gap, and the gap was sent not to the Niger. This gap was stolen by the Western companies. And Of course, it's. I believe that it's true, but I don't think that this is the reason why the people of Niger took a decision. It was a real military operation. We understand this everything, but anyway, this is probably the reasons of this situation, and the Russians are trying currently to cut the profit of the Western countries from the assets in Africa. Furthermore, we got more updates from Niger and from this region. Let's discuss them. I believe they're very interesting. And the first of all is the entire situation in this area. So this is the map of the countries in this area. Most of them have some French forces inside of it, and so on. So with the green color, we see the countries that have already supported the Niger, and we are talking about Mali and Burkina Faso. So these countries reported if something happens with Niger, we will help them, and we will fight with, let's say, the series of countries, the number of countries under the allies of ECOWAS, that all ex-French colonies understand. There is a very critical situation in Senegal, as we discussed yesterday, as the protests started in that country, also against the French presence. So we'll see whether the protests are able to capture the power or something like this. Furthermore, that we discussed that yesterday there was a meeting in Mali between the military authorities of these two countries, like Niger and many other people, and they were discussing about the urgent redeployment of Wagner forces. And as I understand, this question has been resolved. The Wagner do have resources and do have forces, a lot of experienced forces that can be redeployed in this area. So as I understand, probably there are very high chances that a very big part of Wagner forces will be redeployed exactly in Africa, not in Ukraine, and probably this is going to be like this. Furthermore, we got another map with the forces with the presence of French forces. For example, currently there are still Ukrainian forces in Niger, in Chad, in Djibouti, in Gabon, in Senegal, and of course the Ukrainian French forces in Ivory Coast. There are not much forces. For example, in Niger there are around 1,500 soldiers, not much, but anyway, this is like the forces of rapid response that can capture the most important like infrastructural buildings in Niger, like airports and like power plants and many other things that can give time for main NATO or French forces to be redeployed in this area. Furthermore, we got another interesting update that the Niger military authorities cancel all military cooperation agreements with France and pledge to respond immediately to any foreign military intervention made by France in ECOWAS. So they are trying to force the French to leave this territory and so on. And another important update, that the post-president of Niger, Mohamed Bazoum, asked United States of America to restore the constitutional order and democracy in Niger. So the situation is critical. Currently, still official legal power of Niger ask help for United States authorities, and United States of America have legal right to send their forces or to send something and to make an attempt to restore the legal power in that country. This is another Ukraine, this is another probably Korea or something like this, because a lot of people support Russian forces. Some people, probably maybe a lot of people who has money, who was working with the old authorities, also support the old power. So anyway, this will lead to some clashes in this area. I hope that nothing like this is going to happen, and I hope that the worst thing that happens in this area is the growth of the prices, let's say, for uranium and probably the access of these countries to the Russian grain or something like that. I hope that this is going to be the worst thing, because another war is not very good, and in this area at all. And probably that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.